Module 4, Exercise 5 is all about adding details and entourage to your physical model. This is going to give your model that sense of context, a little bit of style to it, and add the opportunity to provide that context that makes your physical model pop and actually be expressive of the design intent. So in this exercise, we're going to understand how to add entourage elements, gain the ability to add detail elements to provide scale and context, and add detail printing strategies for difficult building elements. With exercise 5, we're going to look at a few remaining details on our model that we'll bring into Makerware and just talk conceptually about how we would set them up and print them out. So one of the first things, we can't have a dinosaur museum physical model without having the dinosaur in it. So let's isolate and export the trike. So again, I'm going to go isolate element. I know this is scaled correctly. It's designed to fit exactly where it's supposed to. So that's the exact guy that I'm going to use right there. So STL export, save as my trike. Reset. I know the steps here on the back that are making up this little exterior amphitheater. Those are an element that are going to be very difficult to print, again, if we did this in situ. Because unless I built this as sort of a solid platform all the way up and designed the topography model to work with that, I would have sort of this hollow area underneath them. So again, these are another element that work very, very well to isolate, and we'll print them on edge. So let's isolate that object, isolate element, add-ins, STL export, save, steps, AMP for amphitheater. Reset the isolate. Next, there are times where we also want to have a scale figure inside. So what I did for that, and again, what I'll do on a lot of these models is make multiple scale figures. And I'm going to spare you watching me trace out my scale figure, but I brought in a scale figure image and basically just made a really simple custom component that I traced around it. It's tempting to try and add a lot of detail into something like this, but again, at 6 feet tall, this is only going to be 3/8 of an inch at a 16th inch scale. So again, keep it simple, keep it simple, keep it simple. So my scale figure is right here. Again, I'm going to do the exact same technique. Isolate my element, STL export, save, and save. And the last thing that at times that we want to add in is a tree, or multiple trees across the site. So there's a technique in 3ds Max that I want to show as well, and then we'll bring all of these elements into Makerware. So underneath the Create tab right here inside of 3ds Max is AEC Extended and Foliage. And I'm just going to work with, there are several trees that will do this really well. I like working with the American elm. It's a really simple one to work with. And what you can see is I've brought a tree in, and I'm going to look at its properties. And there are a few settings that are very nice to do. So by default, the view canopy is usually going to be when not selected. Your tree by default is going to look something like this and with branches on. But we want something simple. This is going to be too complicated to print, again, at a 16th inch scale. So I usually turn the viewport canopy mode to always. I turn the branches off. I work a little bit with the pruning, because the pruning is going to sort of set how much the tree canopy is, how big the canopy is. A number of about 0.4 is good. And the great thing about this option is if I have 10, 15 different trees on site, really, really quickly, I can develop original custom shaped trees by using the seed button and simply clicking new. And this gives me a set of variables in terms of what the tree is going to look like. Now I need to do a really, really quick modification so that this will print really well. And the process is really simple to do. I'm going to right click with my object selected, and I'm going to convert it to an editable mesh. I'm going to select points, and I'm going to grab the bottom points on the tree canopy. Just like that. So you can see that bottom edge of the tree canopy is selected. I'm going to scale these in. And I'm going to move them so that they happen just inside of the trunk. I accidentally deselected them there. There we go. Great. And the last thing I'm going to do is move them down so that my slope isn't too severe. I know that my replicator 2 will easily print this trunk, and then it will start growing up at an angle to print the rest of that tree canopy. So really, really simple. Scale it in, move it down just a little bit, and this is ready to print. And again, I can run through those steps really, really quickly to make 5, 6, 7, 8 different kinds of trees for my overall site. So from Max, export, stereolithography file, STL file, tree, and save. I always want to make sure with Max that I'm going to keep selected only unchecked unless I'm trying to isolate something. And I'm going to say OK. So let's go ahead and open up Makerware. And let's import each file in and talk just a little bit about it. So add file. Again, let's start with the trike. Move to platform. Scale 158.69. And this guy's pretty much ready to go. There are a few things that might not print great with that. If I look at the tail, that's sort of out in space. And so it's going to essentially print out a few strands, but eventually it will kind of catch up and do just fine with it. Same thing on the head. If I need a really, really accurate print of this, I might turn on support, something like that. But practice tells me that something this small will actually print pretty well just as is. Especially if I don't need, perfect accuracy on something like this. This is kind of a stand-in object because, again, it's going to be very small at 1/16 inch scale. Let's go ahead and bring in the amphitheater steps next. Move to platform. Change my scale, 158.69. I'm going to rotate these about the z-axis. And then I'm going to stand them up on edge and run lay flat. And then let's move them to the side just a little bit. So again, printing something like those steps, edge up, is both going to print quickly, it's going to print accurately, and you're going to be able to do that without any supports. Really simple system to get that working. Let's add in the next file. Our Entourage. Move to platform, scale 158.69, and let's move it to the side just a little bit so we can see it. So this, again, it's tempting to print them upright, but this is the best configuration to get an accurate layout or an accurate print of our scale figure. And again, this would be something that I would have several different poses, a couple of different Entourage figures all throughout to provide some context and scale inside of the model. Last, let's add in the tree. And the tree is going to be a little bit different because it's coming in from 3ds Max. So again, I'm going to click Don't Scale because I want to control that. So inside of Max, this was about a 30-foot tall tree. And the scale factor is going to be slightly different. Let's pull in. My Excel spreadsheet, Max to MakerBot. The scale factor is going to be 13.22, and that's using 25.4 as a multiplier this time, which is inches to millimeters. So let's apply that as a scale factor on my tree. Need to pull that up one more time, 13.22, 13.22, enter. And I now have, at a 16th inch scale, a nice tree that I can begin putting across the site. And all of those elements are set and ready to build. I would probably do each one in its own pass. I wouldn't try printing all 4 of those together, but you get the idea of how those details can begin coming together to complete and round out the overall physical model. In this lesson, we were able to add Entourage to provide detail, complexity, and add character to a physical model, add details to a physical model for context, and build strategies for printing more complex building elements and forms.